Cold cash buys silence, but it never guarantees loyalty. Deep inside a fortress of marble and lies, a ruthless crime lord broken by a sniper's bullet found his only salvation in a 280-pound hospice nurse. This is a story of beautiful defiance, dangerous secrets, and an unforgiving, deadly romance. Gravel crunched beneath the heavy tires of the black SUV as it wound its way up the secluded driveway of a sprawling Hamptons estate. Briley Rivera sat in the back seat, her hands resting on her lap, fingers anxiously twisting the fabric of her navy blue scrubs. At 29 years old and weighing nearly 280 pounds, Briley was accustomed to taking up space in a world that constantly demanded women shrink themselves. She possessed a soft, round face, thick thighs, and broad shoulders that carried the exhaustion of a grueling nursing career. She was fat, a fact she had long accepted and learned to navigate with quiet dignity. But today, the sheer magnitude of the stone mansion looming ahead made her feel remarkably small. Beside her sat Victor Russo, a man whose perfectly tailored Italian suit did little to mask the predatory gleam in his dark eyes. He was the younger brother of her new patient, and the one who had orchestrated this highly unorthodox, astronomically lucrative private contract. "My brother is not an easy man, Miss Rivera," Victor said smoothly, his voice devoid of any real warmth. "He has fired 6 nurses in the past month. 3 of them left in tears. 2 threatened lawsuits. 1 simply ran out the front door and left her luggage behind." "I am not easily intimidated, Mr. Russo," Briley replied, keeping her voice even. "I worked the trauma ward at Bellevue for 5 years, and I spent 3 years in a high-security psychiatric facility. Shouting and throwing things do not frighten me." Victor chuckled, a dry, hollow sound. "Gabriel doesn't just shout, he destroys. He was the head of our family business. 3 months ago, a rival syndicate put a bullet in his spine. T12 vertebrae shattered. He is completely paralyzed from the waist down. The doctors say he will never walk again. Gabriel refuses to believe them." Briley nodded, her clinical mind already shifting into gear. A spinal cord injury of that magnitude was devastating, not just physically, but psychologically. For a man accustomed to absolute authority and physical dominance, the sudden loss of autonomy would manifest as extreme aggression and bitterness. The SUV parked, and Briley was escorted through a labyrinth of heavily guarded corridors. Men with thick necks and unmistakable bulges under their jackets stood at every corner. The air in the house was heavy, suffocating, smelling of expensive mahogany, stale cigar smoke, and underlying despair. Victor stopped outside a pair of heavy oak doors on the ground floor. "He's in there. You have full medical authority. But if he tells you to get out, I suggest you do it quickly." With that, Victor turned on his heel and walked away, leaving Briley alone. Taking a deep, steadying breath, Briley pushed the doors open. The master suite was plunged into semi-darkness, the heavy velvet curtains drawn tight against the midday sun. The air was frigid, the air conditioning cranked to an uncomfortable extreme. Across the massive room, sitting in a state-of-the-art titanium wheelchair, was Gabriel Russo. He was a striking man, even in the grip of profound physical trauma. Dark, disheveled hair framed a face carved with sharp angles and shadowed by a week's worth of stubble. His shoulders were broad, his arms corded with muscle, a stark contrast to his legs, which sat motionless beneath a dark woolen blanket. As the door clicked shut behind Briley, Gabriel didn't even turn his head. His hand shot out, grabbing a heavy crystal whiskey glass from the side table, and hurled it violently in her direction. The glass shattered against the wall a mere 2 feet from Briley's head, raining amber liquid and sharp shards onto the Persian rug. Briley didn't flinch. She didn't gasp. She simply stood her ground, her heavy, sturdy frame anchored to the floor. "Get out!" Gabriel snarled, his voice a gravelly, terrifying rumble that usually sent grown men scrambling for their lives. "I told Victor I don't want another pathetic, simpering nurse pitying me." Briley slowly looked at the shattered glass, then locked her eyes on the Mafia boss. "It's a shame about the rug," she noted calmly. She walked over to a nearby utility closet she had spotted in the hallway, retrieved a broom and dustpan, and returned to the room. Gabriel watched her in stunned slants as she meticulously swept up the glass. He analyzed her, his dark eyes sweeping over her plus-size figure with an expression of unfiltered disdain. "What the hell is this?" he scoffed, his lip curling into a sneer. "Victor is running out of options. Did he hire a whale because he thought you'd be too heavy for me to throw out the window?" The insult was designed to break her, to find her insecurity and tear it open. Briley dumped the glass into a trash can and walked over to the windows, grabbing the heavy velvet curtains. With a swift pull, she flooded the room with blinding sunlight. Gabriel hissed, throwing an arm over his eyes. "My name is Briley," she said, her voice projecting with the clear, no-nonsense authority of a seasoned medical professional. "I weigh 280 pounds, Mr. Russo, and it's a good thing I do. Because when your spasms act up, or when you inevitably try to transfer yourself to the bed without help and fall flat on your face, I'm the only one with the physical mass and core strength to lift your dead weight off the floor without dropping you." She stepped closer, stopping just outside his personal space. "I don't care who you were 3 months ago. I don't care how many men you command. In this room, you are a patient with a T12 injury, and I am the nurse keeping you from dying of a pulmonary embolism or a pressure ulcer. You can insult my weight all you want, but I am not leaving." Gabriel lowered his arm, his dark, dangerous eyes locking onto hers. For the first time in months, someone was looking at him, not with fear, not with pity, but with absolute, unwavering equality. A heavy silence stretched between them, thick with a strange, undeniable tension. The first 3 weeks were a grueling test of endurance. Gabriel fought Briley on everything. He refused his physical therapy exercises, he fought his medication schedule, and he raged against the intimate indignities of his condition. But Briley remained an immovable object against his unstoppable fury. She turned him every 2 hours through the night to prevent bed sores. She managed his catheter with brisk clinical efficiency, refusing to let him feel ashamed. When he lashed out verbally, she parried his sharp words with dry, unflappable wit. Slowly, the dynamic in the grand, oppressive bedroom began to shift. Gabriel realized that Briley's size was not a vulnerability, but a profound asset. The previous nurses, petite and fragile, had struggled to maneuver his heavy, muscular frame. They had looked at him like he was made of cracked glass. Briley, however, handled him with confident strength. Her broad hips and sturdy legs provided a solid anchor when she assisted his transfers from the bed to the wheelchair. When she held him, she didn't tremble. Beneath the hostility, Gabriel was a man drowning in vulnerability, and Briley became the only solid ground he could reach. The breaking point arrived on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. Victor had come to visit, bringing 3 of his high-ranking capos. The meeting was supposed to be a strategy briefing, but it quickly devolved. "Briley, organizing medical supplies in the adjoining bathroom, could hear the rising tension through the cracked door. Victor was gently, insidiously, suggesting that Gabriel permanently hand over the reins of the syndicate. "You need to rest, Gabe." Victor's voice drifted through the room, laced with fake sympathy. "You're bound to that chair. You can't project strength to the families looking like this." A loud crash echoed through the suite. Briley dropped the bandages and hurried into the bedroom. Gabriel had attempted to lunge at his brother, forgetting, in a blind surge of rage, that his legs would not follow his command. He had thrown his upper body forward, tipping the heavy titanium wheelchair completely over. Gabriel lay sprawled on the expensive rug, his paralyzed legs tangled awkwardly beneath the metal frame. He was breathing heavily, his face flushed with a mixture of immense fury and agonizing humiliation. Victor's men immediately stepped forward, their hands reaching out to grab their fallen boss. "Don't touch me!" Gabriel roared, swatting furiously at his own soldiers. He tried to push himself up using his massive upper body strength, but the angle of the fallen chair trapped him. He looked utterly helpless in front of the men who used to fear him as a god. Victor sighed, looking down at his brother with a mixture of pity and triumph. "Help him up, boys. He's confused." "Back away," a sharp, booming voice cut through the room. Briley marched forward, her heavy footsteps solid and authoritative. She shoved past a heavily tattooed capo who was twice her size, her mass and momentum easily pushing the stunned man aside. "I said, back away from my patient," she commanded, glaring at Victor and his men. "Nurse, let my men handle this," Victor snapped, his polite facade cracking. "They don't know the proper biomechanics for a spinal patient. If they jerk him upward, they could cause severe tearing to his lumbar muscles." Briley lied smoothly. It was a technical-sounding bluff, but it made the soldiers freeze. She knelt beside Gabriel. He was trembling, his dark eyes frantic, stripped of his armor in front of his enemies. Briley didn't look at his useless legs. She looked right into his eyes. "Gabriel," she said softly, dropping the Mr. Russo for the first time. "Look at me. Only at me." He locked his panicked gaze onto her warm, brown eyes. "I'm going to brace the chair," she instructed in a calm, steady whisper meant only for him. "I'm going to put my arms under your arms. I'm going to use my weight to pull you back, and I need you to use your core to follow my momentum. We do this together. Understood?" Gabriel swallowed hard, giving a minuscule nod. Briley positioned her thick, sturdy legs, planting her feet wide for maximum stability. She wrapped her thick arms tightly under his armpits, pressing her soft, broad chest against his back to stabilize his spine. She took a deep breath. "On 3, she whispered. 1, 2, 3. With a powerful grunt, Briley leaned back. She used every ounce of her 280 pounds, leveraging her substantial weight backward like a heavy counterweight. Her thick thighs strained, her core locked tight. Gabriel pushed up with his arms simultaneously. In one smooth, fluid motion, Briley hauled the massive, muscular mafia boss and the heavy metal chair back upright, setting him perfectly in place. She didn't waver. She didn't struggle. She was a fortress. The room fell into a dead silence. Gabriel sat upright, his dignity fully restored, his breathing slowing. He felt the lingering warmth of her solid body behind his chair, a profound, shocking sense of safety washing over him. He slowly raised his head, his dark eyes turning lethal as he looked at his brother and the capos. The vulnerability was gone, replaced by the cold, calculating monster that ruled the underworld. "Get out," Gabriel ordered quietly. "Gabe, we need to finish this discussion," Victor started. "I said get out." Gabriel's voice dropped an octave, dripping with pure menace. "Before I have my men outside drag you out by your teeth." Victor's jaw tightened. He signaled his men, and they quickly filed out of the room, leaving the heavy oak doors to click shut behind them. Gabriel sat in silence for a long moment. Briley stepped around to the front of the chair to check his legs for any bruising. "Are you hurt?" she asked quietly, her professional demeanor slipping back into place. Suddenly, Gabriel reached out. His large, calloused hand wrapped gently around her thick wrist, stopping her movements. He didn't grip her tightly. It was a touch of reverence. He looked up at her, really looking at her, the soft curve of her jaw, the fierce intelligence in her eyes, the beautiful, unapologetic reality of her body that had just saved his pride and his power. "You're the only one allowed to touch me," Gabriel murmured, his voice thick with an emotion he had never felt before. "From now on, nobody else. Just you." Briley's heart gave an unexpected, dangerous flutter. She looked down at his hand holding hers, the warmth of his skin seeping into her pulse. But as she pulled away to check his vital signs, her eyes landed on the medical chart resting on his nightstand. Victor had brought Gabriel's new prescription refills. Briley frowned, scanning the labels. The dosage for the blood thinners and the muscle relaxants had been drastically altered. If she administered these doses, Gabriel wouldn't just be weak. He would be completely incapacitated. The realization hit her like a physical blow. Victor wasn't waiting for his brother to step down. He was actively trying to sedate him into oblivion, and Briley was the only thing standing in his way. Midnight cast long, jagged shadows across the Persian rug as Briley held the amber prescription bottles under the harsh beam of her penlight. She cross-referenced the labels with the private medical database on her tablet, her heart hammering a frantic, terrifying rhythm against her ribs. The label on the baclofen, a potent antispasmodic muscle relaxant, indicated a dosage of 80 milligrams to be administered every 4 hours. That was absurd. It was enough to suppress Gabriel's respiratory drive entirely. Furthermore, the blood thinner, warfarin, had its dosage tripled. If Briley blindly followed these instructions, supposedly authorized by a doctor, Harrison Gable, at the Sutton Place Concierge Clinic in Manhattan, Gabriel would slip into a coma and suffer a massive internal hemorrhage within 48 hours. It would look exactly like a tragic, natural complication resulting from his severe spinal cord injury. Victor was not just maneuvering for control of the syndicate. He was orchestrating a quiet, medically untraceable assassination. Briley carefully placed the bottles back on the nightstand, her hands trembling not from fear, but from a profound, boiling outrage. She looked toward the center of the massive bedroom. Gabriel was awake, watching her from his bed with sharp, discerning eyes that missed absolutely nothing in his environment. "You have been staring at those bottles for 10 minutes, Gabriel stated, his voice a low, gravelly rumble in the quiet room. "Is there a problem with my medication, Briley?" She walked over to the edge of his bed, the heavy, solid thud of her footsteps grounding her. She didn't mince words. She wasn't dealing with a fragile patient. She was dealing with a predator who needed to know a trap had been set. "Your brother altered the prescriptions," Briley said bluntly, handing him the tablet with the highlighted standard dosage charts, then holding up the forged pill bottle. "If I give you these pills at this frequency, your lungs will stop functioning by tomorrow evening. If the hypoxia doesn't kill you, the internal bleeding from the warfarin will. Victor is trying to murder you, Gabriel." Gabriel did not gasp. He did not yell. The temperature in the room simply seemed to drop 10 degrees. His jaw clenched, a muscle ticking violently beneath his stubble. He looked at the bottles, then slowly shifted his dark, dangerous gaze up to Briley's face. "And yet," Gabriel murmured softly, "you are telling me this instead of packing your bags and running out the front door to save your own life." "I am a nurse," Briley replied fiercely, her broad shoulders squaring. "I took an oath to do no harm, and I certainly don't let perfectly healthy men get medically assassinated on my watch. I am replacing these with your actual dosage from the reserve supply I brought from Bellevue Pharmacy. But Victor is going to expect you to deteriorate. What is our move?" Gabriel's eyes softened, a stark contrast to the lethal calculating in his mind. Our move. She had aligned herself with him. This beautiful, resilient, 280-pound woman had just willingly stepped into the crosshairs of a mafia war to protect a paralyzed man. "Come here," Gabriel commanded gently. Briley stepped closer. He reached out, his large, calloused hands gripping her thick waist. With a surprising amount of upper body strength, he pulled her down until she was sitting on the edge of the mattress beside him. The springs groaned softly under her weight, a sound that usually made Briley flush with embarrassment. But Gabriel's hands never left her waist. He anchored her there, his thumbs gently stroking the soft fabric of her scrubs. "Victor controls the perimeter guards," Gabriel explained, his voice dropping to a low, intimate whisper. "He controls the house staff, but he does not control Dominic Rossi, my underboss, who operates out of Brooklyn. If Victor thinks the drugs are working, he will come here to witness my final moments. He won't be able to resist gloating. We need to let him think he is winning." Briley nodded, her professional mask slipping slightly as Gabriel's thumb traced the curve of her hip. "I will manage the symptoms. I can use cosmetic drops to dilate your pupils. I will lower the room temperature to make your skin clammy. But Gabriel, if he brings armed men into this room—" "He will," Gabriel interrupted, his eyes darkening. "Which is why I need you to retrieve the false bottom of my mahogany humidor in the study. There is a prepaid, untraceable phone. You need to text Dominic a single word: Eclipse." Gabriel looked at her, truly looking at the woman who had become his lifeline. He saw the flush on her round cheeks, the rapid pulse beating at the base of her throat. He lifted a hand, his rough fingers gently cupping her jawline. "Why are you doing this, Briley?" he asked, his voice raw. "You owe me nothing. I treated you terribly when you arrived." "Because you are still fighting," she whispered, leaning slightly into his touch. "Because you looked at me and didn't see a punchline or a tragedy or a medical liability. You just saw me." Gabriel pulled her down, his mouth crashing into hers. It was not a tentative kiss. It was a claiming, filled with desperate gratitude and blistering heat. Briley gasped, her thick arms naturally wrapping around his broad shoulders. She felt the heavy, solid muscle of his chest, the frantic beating of his heart. For so long, Briley had hidden herself away, wearing her fatness like a shield against a cruel world. But here, in the dark, dangerous arms of a crippled king, she felt worshipped. Gabriel's hands mapped her curves with reverence, pulling her heavy body against him, as if her weight was the only thing keeping him tethered to the earth. "You are magnificent," he breathed against her lips, his hands tangling in her hair. "When this is over, Briley, you are never leaving this house. You are mine." Friday night arrived with a suffocating tension. A heavy fog rolled off the Atlantic Ocean, swallowing the Hamptons estate in a thick, grey soup. Inside the master suite, the stage was meticulously set. Gabriel lay motionless in the center of the massive bed. His skin was pale and covered in a cold sweat, courtesy of a damp rag and a dusting of talcum powder Briley had expertly applied. The heart monitor beside the bed beeped in a slow, erratic rhythm, which Briley had mechanically simulated by taping the sensors to a calibrated metronome hidden beneath the mattress. Briley sat in a leather armchair in the corner, her hands resting tightly on her thick thighs. Beneath the draping fabric of her oversized cardigan, her fingers were wrapped tightly around the cold, heavy steel of a medical oxygen tank wrench. At exactly 11 o'clock, the heavy oak doors swung open. Victor Russo walked in, accompanied by two massive men wearing paramedic uniforms. Briley instantly recognized the lie. Their jackets lacked the official NYS Department of Health patches, and their boots were military-issue tactical gear, not standard medical footwear. "How is he, Nurse Rivera?" Victor asked, his voice dripping with faux sorrow as he approached the bed. He didn't even look at Briley. His eyes were glued to his brother's seemingly lifeless form. "His blood pressure has plummeted, Mr. Russo," Briley lied smoothly, standing up to block their direct path to the medical equipment. "His respiratory rate is critically low. He is entirely unresponsive. I was just about to call the emergency services." "There will be no need for that," Victor said, a cruel, triumphant smile finally breaking across his face. He stepped closer to the bed, looking down at Gabriel. "He's fading. It's a tragedy, truly. The great Gabriel Russo, brought down by his own failing body." Victor nodded to the two fake paramedics. "Draw the syringe. We need to speed this up. I want his heart stopped before midnight." One of the men reached into his medical bag, pulling out a syringe filled with clear liquid. He stepped toward the bed. "Stop!" Briley commanded, stepping directly in front of the man. Her 280-pound frame formed a solid, unmoving barricade between the assassin and Gabriel. "You will not touch my patient." Victor sighed in annoyance. "Move the fat nurse out of the way. If she struggles, break her neck." The man reached out to grab Briley's scrubs. He expected her to cower, to shrink back. He severely underestimated the physics of a woman who spent her life wrestling 200-pound sedated psychiatric patients. As the man grabbed her collar, Briley dropped her center of gravity, planting her thick legs firmly into the rug. With a primal yell, she swung the heavy steel oxygen wrench upward, cracking it brutally against the side of the man's knee. The sickening crunch of bone echoed through the room. The assassin howled in agony, his leg buckling instantly. As he collapsed, Briley used her entire body weight to shove him backward into the second man, sending them both crashing into the medical tray in a shower of metal and shattered glass. Victor cursed, pulling a suppressed pistol from his jacket. He aimed it directly at Briley's broad chest. "You stupid bitch!" Victor snarled. "Victor!" The voice was cold, deep, and absolutely lethal. Victor froze, slowly turning his head toward the bed. Gabriel was sitting straight up. The pale, sweaty facade was completely gone, replaced by the terrifying, dominant aura of the syndicate boss. In his steady right hand, Gabriel held a Glock 19, aimed dead center at his brother's forehead. "You always were impatient, little brother," Gabriel said quietly. Before Victor could raise his weapon, the heavy oak doors behind him burst open. Dominic Rossi, a mountain of a man with cold, dead eyes, stormed into the room, followed by 4 heavily armed loyalists. They immediately leveled their assault rifles at Victor and the 2 groaning men on the floor. The trap had snapped shut. Victor dropped his gun, his hands trembling as he raised them in the air. The color completely drained from his face as he stared at Gabriel. Gabe, please. I was just trying to secure the family. You're crippled. You can't lead from a wheelchair." I rule from a throne, Victor, Gabriel corrected coldly. And you are no longer part of this family. Gabriel didn't blink as he gave Dominic a subtle nod. Dominic stepped forward, grabbing Victor roughly by the back of the neck and dragging him out of the room, followed by the two wounded assassins. The heavy doors clicked shut, plunging the bedroom back into a deafening silence. Gabriel slowly lowered his weapon, clicking the safety on before tossing it onto the nightstand. The adrenaline of the confrontation slowly faded, leaving the room feeling vast and empty. He looked over at Briley. She was standing amidst the overturned medical supplies, her chest heaving, her knuckles white around the steel wrench. She looked fierce, terrifying, and utterly breathtaking. "Are you hurt?" Gabriel asked, his voice suddenly stripped of all its venom, leaving only raw, desperate concern. Briley dropped the wrench. It hit the rug with a dull thud. She walked over to the bed, her heavy, comforting presence filling the space. She reached out, her soft, warm hands resting on either side of his face. "I told you," Briley whispered, a wet, emotional laugh escaping her lips. "I am not easily intimidated." Gabriel pulled her down, burying his face into the soft, warm curve of her neck. He inhaled the scent of vanilla and antiseptic that was entirely her. He was a paralyzed king in a dangerous world, but as her strong, thick arms wrapped tightly around him, shielding him from the dark, Gabriel knew he was entirely invincible. Did Briley and Gabriel's dangerous love story keep you on the edge of your seat? If you loved this thrilling blend of mafia romance and real-life medical drama, smash that like button and share this video with your fellow romance readers. Please do not forget to subscribe to our channel and ring the notification bell so you never miss out on our explosive, heart-pounding stories. Please leave a comment below telling us your favorite shocking plot twist today.